Thank you all for being here. I first, on behalf of the entire Republican Conference, want to say our thoughts and prayers are with everybody in Florida and for those states that are seeing the hurricane continue to move through. We will do anything in our power as lawmakers to help and assist. Reached out to Governor DeSantis and others to make sure. A number of the Floridian members are home now working within their districts. As we are in the final hours here of this legislative session, the American people are continuing to ask, can they afford it? They've watched what has happened with one-party rule in Washington, where Democrats control the White House, the Senate, the House, the Department of Education, your supply chain. And what have they seen? A body of Democrats who united to spend so much, even when the Democrats warned them not to do it. When Larry Summers, former Secretary of Treasury, told them not to spend those $2 trillion that it would harm America and create inflation. They went forward anyways. When Steve Ratner, advisor to President Obama, calls it the original sin of inflation. When they attacked American energy but begged OPEC to supply. We've watched the price of gas rise. Again, inflation. When their cries of the Democrats and voted to defund the police, to work hard they did to elect woke prosecutors who don't hold the law, we watched crime rise throughout. When they watched to change the policies of our border, where more than 3.5 million have come across. We're now fentanyl, the #1 killer of our children between the ages of 18 and 45. 300 Americans will be poisoned today and die because of fentanyl. That's the equivalent of one airline crashing each and every day in America. But the administration ignores it. So what has this one-party rule of Democrats brought us? Higher prices with inflation. My question to every single American, can you afford to give up 1 month wages? An entire month of your wages, could you afford to give it up? Most everyone would say no. But unfortunately, under the Democrats, that's what they have taken from you. 1 month is 8.3% of your whole year's salary. Well, that's what inflation has done. They told you to continue to have to pay all your bills, but only have 11 of the 12 months to do it in. We watched the price of your gas go up, inflation rise, a border that's unsecure, kids who are now left behind because of their policies during the pandemic. So the American public is asking a simple question. Could you afford it? Could it be different? Well, Republicans have worked for the last 1.5 years, and we have the commitment to America. The policies that create a plan to put us on a new track. It's a plan for an economy that is strong, where you can fill up your tank and feed your families, where paychecks grow, not shrink. A plan for a nation that is safe, where communities are protected, law enforcement is respected, and criminals are prosecuted. It's a plan for a future that is built on freedom, where children come first and are taught to dream big. A plan for government that is accountable, where politicians don't get special treatment and Americans get answers. The truth is, we simply cannot afford 2 more years of Democrat control. It is our commitment to the American public, a plan for a new direction to make sure that the next century is the American century. With that, I want to introduce our whip, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Kevin. And I, too, want to extend my prayers and thoughts to the people of Florida and South Carolina as they face the devastation of Hurricane Ian. We're here today on the backdrop of the Capitol as we get ready to go back into our communities around the country. And as we go around the country, you're hearing the same recurring theme. Families are struggling under the weight of big government socialism. What Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi have done the last 2 years to ram through trillions in spending, mountains of heavy regulation, and more big government socialism, it's hurting the lower income families of America. It's costing people jobs. It's making it harder for them to put food on the table. And people are saying enough is enough. And they're losing hope. But the good news is we're providing hope in what the commitment to America represents. We're laying out to the American people a plan, a vision for the future, bold conservative ideas that actually confront these problems that Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, and all the other big government socialists here in Washington have done to make things harder for people. We're going to actually return power back to people, restore freedom and hope to communities. We're going to get government off of people's back and do things like reduce inflation, like bring an energy policy that promotes American energy after we've seen a year and a half of attacks on American energy. And when Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi go after American energy, it yields higher prices at the pump. It means people can put less food on the table. You know, we were in Pennsylvania rolling this out just a few days ago, and we heard from families that are struggling. They talked about how it makes it harder for them to live their normal lives. When they talk about the border crisis, we had a sheriff, and we hear from sheriffs like this all the time. And unfortunately, we also hear from coroners who tell us the thousands of deaths from fentanyl. Over 100,000 of our young people died because Joe Biden opened the southern border, and then China makes fentanyl. They know the drug cartels can bring it right across this open southern border, and it ends up in every community in America, which means every community in America is now a border town because Joe Biden won't secure the border. Republicans, if we win the House majority, will bring legislation to secure America's border. We're willing to show the country what we would do if they give us a Republican majority in November. And what's interesting is to see the visceral reaction that happened literally just minutes after we rolled this out. You saw Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden not saying they want to work with us to solve these problems. They just went right down the same old failed road of attacking good ideas. They call it MAGA extremism to lower inflation. Nancy Pelosi says it's MAGA extremism to lower energy costs, to secure America's border. Pelosi actually says it's extremism to let parents be involved in their kids' education. Well, you know what? If that's what she thinks is extremism, maybe it's time for Nancy Pelosi to go. We're going to fire Nancy Pelosi. We're going to actually go and fight for the American people to restore that hope with the commitment to America, to show that there is a better way to get this country back on track and restore the American dream for generations to come. And with that, now I'm proud to bring up our conference chair, Elise Stefanik.
Thank you, Steve. As Leader McCarthy said, today House Republicans continue to pray for all of those on Hurricane Ian's destructive path. Several of our Florida members and many families across Florida are bracing for this catastrophic disaster as it makes its way across the state. But across America, families are struggling. They're struggling to balance their budgets. Seniors, including many from my district, are draining their savings, and the next generation is finding it impossible to afford the American dream. Joe Biden and House Democrats have no plan to address the skyrocketing inflation, highest in my lifetime. They have no plan to secure the border, and they have no plan to address the skyrocketing crime crisis causing chaos in our streets. And the American people are smart. They know that single-party Democrat rule have caused these crises. Today, over 70% of America's workers now say their wages have fallen behind Joe Biden's skyrocketing inflation tax. And according to recent polling, voters trust Republicans over Democrats on issue after issue, whether it's the economy, whether it's the border, whether it's inflation or crime. It is clear the American people are looking for a new direction, and House Republicans have a plan. Our commitment to America fights back against the Democrats' radical agenda. It will rein in reckless spending to combat inflation. It will end Joe Biden's open border policies and secure our southern border. We will roll back Democrats' soft on crime policies supporting our law enforcement. We will unleash American energy dominance and defend our constitutional freedoms. Americans cannot afford to live under Democrats' failed rule anymore, and help is on the way. In just 40 days, House Republicans will fire lame duck Speaker Nancy Pelosi once and for all, hold Joe Biden accountable for his failed leadership, and save America. In a new Republican majority, we will create an economy that's strong, a nation that is safe, a future that's built upon freedom, and a government that's accountable. This is our commitment to America. And I'm honored to introduce our colleague, Congresswoman Ashley Hinson from Iowa.
Well, good morning, everyone. We all know last year President Biden and Speaker Pelosi spent and spent and spent. And now we are all paying the price for that as inflation eats away at everyone's paychecks. America cannot afford one-party rule any longer. 1 in 6 Americans are behind on their utility bills. Grocery prices are up 13.5% annually. Iowa farmers are grappling with sky-high fertilizer and diesel prices, and mortgage rates are the highest that they have been since 2008. So while Democrats continue to double down on reckless spending, including through their $400 billion student loan debt transfer, Republicans are working on common sense policies to help restore our economy for everyone. We are committed to combating inflation, regaining American energy independence to bring down the cost of gas and electricity, and making goods here in America, not in China. We believe you should keep more of your hard-earned money and that you know how to spend your money and your paycheck better than the government can. So Republicans, we have a plan to get our economy back on track. But first, the most important step in doing so is electing a Republican House majority so that we can close President Biden's checkbook and put a check on this administration. We are committed to a strong economy. We are committed to working families, and we are committed to a strong America. Now it's my honor to introduce my colleague from Texas, Mayra Flores. Congresswoman, thank you.
Thank you so much, Leader McCarthy and fellow colleagues. On June 14th, I became the first Mexican-born congresswoman ever elected in Congress. And the commitment to America is fighting exactly for that, for the American dream. A nation that is safe, una nación segura. That is what all Americans want, and that is what we will deliver with the commitment to America. As a mother of 4 children and a representative of a border district, I can say that the situation we find ourselves in today, both as a nation and as a community, is disturbing. The status quo cannot stand. We have borders that are being overrun with people and drugs, of which are benefiting drug cartels and human smugglers. We have communities where local leaders have abandoned their citizens that elected them to be in that position, and are instead standing up and protecting criminals and gang members over mothers and fathers. Places where community leaders have turned their back on the police and their daily heroic efforts to keep us all safe. We have drugs coming into our community, our schools, our homes, meant to steal the youth and life of our children and rip apart the fabric of our country's most valuable treasure, our families, our familias. But this ends here, and this ends now. As elected leaders, we have a responsibility to lead our communities, our country, and our youth to a better tomorrow. Not only by fixing what ails us today, but also by positioning ourselves to tackle the challenges of the next 10, 20, or 50 years. And it starts in November. The commitment to America is not just a roadmap to a better tomorrow. It is a roadmap to a better America. We all want an economy that is strong, a nation that is safe, a future built on freedom, a government that is accountable to we, the people. So today we stand in front of you to bring you this promesa. We will get it done. We will make our country more secure, more prosperous, and make America the best place to live, work, and raise a family. Para aquellos que están escuchando en casa, sepan esto, los republicanos en el Congreso queremos trabajar para ayudarles a ustedes y a su familia a prosperar. Lo único que pedimos es su apoyo, sus oraciones, su fuerza para sacar este país adelante. La comunidad hispana es una de las más afectadas en esta economía y muchos de nosotros lo sabemos. Que no nos engañen. Todos queremos una economía fuerte, una nación segura, un futuro basado en libertad y un gobierno que rinda cuentas. Este noviembre, con el plan Compromiso con América, lo lograremos. Thank you, and God bless America.
We will next hear from our colleague, Congressman Burgess Owens.
I'm a father of 6 children and 16 grandchildren. My dream is that they one day will successfully run circles around me. That is the desire of every past generation. It has always been about our children. It is the American way. It's time we start teaching our children what freedom looks like, what it means, and where it comes from. Our founding father, Thomas Jefferson, once said, ignorant and free can never be. The House Republicans are committed to a future that's built on freedom. For far too many decades, our children have been trained by an antiquated and unfair education system. They go into the world unprepared, angry, hating our country, trained by a system focused more on the welfare of bureaucrats and labor union bosses than our precious children. The Republican Party's commitment to America will get our country back on track. We're going to pass the Parents' Bill of Rights, ensuring transparency and restoring the voices of moms and dads. We'll make it very clear that parents are the primary stakeholders for their children's education. We're going to ensure that only biological girls can compete in girls' sports. It's called good old school American common sense and fairness. We're going to expand education so that every child in America has an opportunity to succeed. Please hear us single moms across our country, especially those who live in these hapless and hopeless run democratic cities of Detroit, Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, D.C., and the state of California. Those of you who pray every night that your child will finally break the poverty cycle, I promise you, help is on the way. The Republican Party's commitment to America will allow, in the future, an opportunity to look back on November 2022 as our nation's turning point. A point in which we once again begin to build our children's future on a foundation of freedom. It will be a point of clarity for all American children regarding the vision of Martin Luther King, and regardless of race, creed, color, zip code, or city. Free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty, free at last. Commitment to America. We're on our way, my friends. Hang in there.
Thank you, Burgess. We will now hear from our colleague, Congressman Jamie Comer.
I want to thank my colleagues for coming together today as we present to America the Republican plan to get our country back. Across this country, Americans feel ignored by Washington. The Biden administration has created multiple crises that impact their daily lives. But with Democrats' one-party rule in Washington, there has been absolutely zero accountability. In fact, if you look at the House Oversight Committee, we have had 0 Biden cabinet officials. We haven't even had any high-level Biden cabinet administrators in front of the Oversight Committee. But 2 years ago, during the Trump administration, there were dozens and dozens of cabinet officials that came before the committee. As part of our commitment to America, Republicans are prepared to restore transparency and hold Washington accountable. Republicans have been pushing for months to hold hearings on the many pressing crises creating by the Biden administration. Inflation remains at a 40-year high. Energy prices are rising. The border is open to illicit drugs and illegal immigration. Teens are dying from fentanyl. Students are behind because Democrats closed schools for so long, and many families are stressed, wondering how they're going to make ends meet. Biden administration officials and the unaccountable federal bureaucracy will no longer be able to hide behind closed doors. They're going to be held accountable for their actions. House Republicans have officially put the Biden administration on notice. Since the beginning of this Congress, House Republicans have sent more than 500 requests for information and documents. Republicans are united in our effort to conduct oversight and hold the Biden White House accountable for its incompetence at home and abroad. Since President Biden took office, Democrats have turned a blind eye and completely abandoned oversight. One nonpartisan group even gave Democrats on the Oversight Committee an F. Under Republican leadership, Congress will fulfill its constitutional duty to conduct oversight. Rooting out waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement in the federal government are at the top of our agenda. When backed by the many tools that come with the gavel, the American people will finally get some answers they deserve. Americans can count on Republicans to deliver government efficiency and effectiveness. Americans can count on Republicans to protect their taxpayer dollars. And Americans can count on Republicans to hold the Biden administration accountable. This is our commitment to America. Thank you.
In 40 days, Americans have a decision to make. Do they want an economy that's strong? That make America energy independent, lower your gas prices, slow the growth of inflation? Do they want a nation that is safe, that will secure their border, not defund the police, but add police? Do they want a future that's built on freedom, where you have a parent's Bill of Rights, you have a say in your kids' education? Do they want a government that's accountable, a check and balance, that you have a say? It will be a difference. And that's our commitment to you, a commitment to America. If you entrust us with the majority, that's exactly what we'll do. And on the very first day, our very first bill will repeal the 87,000 IRS agents. Because your government should be here to help you, not to go after you. That's the difference with a new majority. With that, let's open it up for questions. No, I'm worried about America. Can we afford to continue one-party rule where inflation has taken entire months of salary? I'm worried about Americans. Can they afford their electricity costs that are now 5 times before, and 20 million Americans can't pay it today? I'm worried about Americans between the ages of 18 and 45, that 300 will die today because the Democrats have opened up this border, have empowered the cartels, and now bring the poison from China in, killing Americans. I'm worried about today that can we afford this lost learning, these kids that are left behind, and when parents simply want to go to a kid's school board meeting that a DOJ would call them terrorists. I'm worried about today that you have no check and balance, that we do not know what happened in those last days of Afghanistan that took 13 Gold Star families. I'm worried about today that will tomorrow be better. But in 40 days, we can make that difference. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. You know, I have a great deal of trust in Governor DeSantis. I watched his leadership here in the House, and I'm watching his leadership at a crisis time in the nation of how he led Florida. I have no concerns of their ability to be able to carry out an election. I have no concerns about the idea of what he's prepared ahead of time to get in there to help those citizens, but we'll do anything in our power to help them as well. Yes, sir. Well, I think our dollars should go further. We should always be able to. The most important thing in a military is to make sure you have the most advanced so you never have to use it. And I've watched what has happened under the Biden-Obama administration before, the hypersonics that China and Russia pulled ahead of us. It's a real concern. I'm concerned about our troops on the front line. Do they have the resources that they need to protect them? So we have a lot of people who served in the military right behind me, and I think they know what's best and the ability to make sure we're protected for a future that America is still the strongest and will never have to go to war because of our strength. Yes, ma'am. You know, in our commitment to America, we talk clearly about we're here to protect the children and the mother. It's very clear about that. What I'm very concerned about is how drastic the Democrats have gone, how extreme. They no longer support the Hyde Amendment. They will simply say, with tax dollars, you would not use it for abortion. President Biden, in all of his 40 years of office here, supported the Hyde Amendment. But now they're so extreme, they'll go all the way to have an abortion at birth. At birth. I get real concerned by that. Yes, ma'am. Look, we're not going to predetermine what happens. The number one promise we make to the American public is we're going to get to the bottom of the truth, and we'll let the truth take us to wherever it goes, and we'll uphold the law, whatever we need to do. Yes, ma'am. The one thing, we just went through 4 years of watching a political impeachment. We've watched 4 years of what we learned even today, that Adam Schiff first lies to the American public. Now we find out he went to freshmen, to those Democrats, to write that article because they knew Nancy Pelosi would move for impeachment. It was all predetermined. We will uphold the law. We will not play politics with it, but we'll do whatever in the nature that the rules and facts take us to. Last question. Yes, ma'am. We don't underestimate anything. The one thing we do know is we went across this country for the last almost 2 years. The American public is hurting. They're hurting when it comes to the cost of living. Every day when they go to the grocery store, of how much it costs. New mothers and fathers can't get baby formula for their children. The price of gas continues to rise, that Americans have to make a decision of where they can go. Their children being left behind because of the policies during the pandemic. But they go to a school board meeting, they're called a terrorist simply because they want to have a say in their kids' education. A border where more than 3 million people have come across, where you have people on the terrorist watch list. You have fentanyl, now the #1 killer of people between the ages of 18 and 45. No accountability when you just listened to Congressman Comer coming before the committee. We have a responsibility. The American people have an opportunity. In 40 days, we make this promise to you. We will work for you, not the other way around that you currently have in Washington. It's our commitment to America. Thank you and God bless.